Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nugentino Cinema, and I'd like to welcome back Kylie. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Drew?
I'm doing good. Yeah, so we're back today to review The King of Comedy, directed by Martin Scorsese. And this is a movie I've seen a couple of times, but it seems to get better on every rewatch. Just right off the bat, what were your initial thoughts on the movie?
Um, I guess my initial thoughts were I kept waiting for some kind of release to happen. I felt like I was holding my breath the whole time, like waiting for Rupert to kind of figure out, you know, what he was doing and like maybe this wasn't the right way for him to try to gain fame and start his stand-up comedy career. Um,
Hmm.
but I really enjoyed that aspect of it because I was just like kind of on my toes the whole time of like, oh, don't do that, don't make that decision. But then every time he just like it just keeps getting worse and snowballs into this thing that I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, and then ended up with him being famous like he wanted, for better or for
Yeah,
worse.
I thought that was an interesting ending. Just one, I should probably set it up for people that may not have seen it. It's a movie starring Robert De Niro, directed by Martin Scorsese, also starring Jerry Lewis and Sandra Bernhard. But it's about a guy in New York who is obsessed with this late night talk show host played by Jerry Lewis, who's supposed to be kind of like at the time, would have been like Johnny Carson or somebody like that. And he's obsessed and he wants to become a comedian. And he thinks his way to break into the biz is to just harass this guy. The same thing with Sandra Bernhard. I guess she's not so much. She's another sort of strange New York person, but she's not so much trying to make it into the industry as she is just obsessed with Jerry Lewis's character, just as a fan. But yeah, that's the basic gist of the movie. But it's a sort of kind of pairs well with Taxi Driver. It's got a lot of similar themes to Taxi Driver, but I think this one is a lot more overtly comedic. And yeah, I think it might have been the first time in Scorsese's career that I can know. I mean, there's always funny stuff here and there in all of his movies, but this one felt very comedic, and you could almost call it a comedy in some regard, I think.
Yeah, I could see that. And like it's comedic, but in a way that's like you're awkwardly laughing at like, okay, like this is kind of strange and like not really how social situations typically go. But he's
Hmm.
like consistent with, this is his dream, this is what he wants to do, and he's going to do anything to get it. Um, and it's really interesting to me how self-absorbed he seems to be as a character, but also is obsessed with, I don't know if he's obsessed with Jerry or if he's obsessed with what Jerry has. Like he wants to be Jerry almost.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely wants to be Jerry. I mean, his pinnacle dream is to stand there on the stage where Jerry stands, and really, he just wants it for himself. A lot of his dreams, he sort of pictures Jerry like groveling to him, being like you're the best, like you're the king, and just basically worshiping him. I think he just wants to knock him off his throne, basically.
Right. I
But
love the part where he was like, "Come on, just take over the show for 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks." And they're like going back and forth. I thought that was great. That was definitely one of
yeah, that
my
was awesome.
favorite um like dreams that he had, or like daydreams.
Yeah, one thing that I thought was interesting this time around is, and I'm sure I had noticed this before, but like the way the daydreams start, it sets up that Robert De Niro will sit in his basement, sort of rehearsing these talk show appearances, and it'll like dip into his fantasy, and then it'll become very clear that it's him rehearsing it or it's in his mind. And but something I thought was interesting is that I think that the delusions sort of start to blend into reality towards the end, because when he's performing his set, I think that's where it starts to sort of get weird. Like you could question, like, did the set really go this well? Was it really that great? Because I mean, I think he does pretty well, and that was one of the interesting things about his set is it was relatively funny. People were like laughing, and then obviously at the end, it's like he gets out and he's a star, and yeah, so I think you could question like how much of that was real and how much of that was fantasy. Like, because at the beginning they make it very clear what is and what isn't fantasy, but it starts to get not so clear towards the end, I think.
I agree with that. And they set it up at the beginning as he's not, and just throughout the whole movie, that he's not a reliable like character, just in like the way that he views things, because he thinks, oh, like Jerry invited me to his house and Jerry did this and this and that, and it's like his fantasies are bleeding into reality, and where does that end? And I kind of liked that element of in that sense, I guess, like now I'm thinking, did the ending really happen like that at all? So that's interesting, right. And that's something that I didn't think about on my like initial watch, because this was my first time ever seeing it. But I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's something I find interesting about this and Taxi Driver. We have a similar thing going on in Taxi Driver, where at the end, have you seen Taxi Driver?
I have.
Okay, cool. Yeah, at the end he sort of attacks this brothel and kills many people, but then it all like works out for him in the end. And his old girl that he was obsessed with is still, wanting to talk to him, and it sort of seems like this like fantasized version, but the movie plays it as reality. So I think that's like something Scorsese liked to do in a few of his films. I sort of like, there's like sort of a interesting, because like you have Goodfellas, you have The Wolf of Wall Street, Casino. That's like one sort of thing Scorsese does. It's like this like tapestry mobster movies, or something that's spanning generations. You're seeing the rise and fall of somebody. That's one thing that he does that's very popular, and he's tried it a few different times. But the other side of the coin he's done a few times is sort of this like loner type person, sort of like losing their mind. That's something else he's really interested in. And you have Taxi Driver, you have this, and I guess the other one would be Bringing Out the Dead with Nicolas Cage. That one's sort of along those lines as well. But yeah, I think it's interesting how.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say it's interesting how he explores those themes, but yeah, go ahead.
Do you think After Hours kind of fits into the category of like the loner losing his mind?
Yeah, I think it would fit in there. Like I think it's a little bit different just in that it's like more of like a straight up comedy. Like I don't think they're exploring like really deep like psychological themes in that movie, but I still like, think it's like
strong in it,
Yeah. But I still think it can be compared to that for sure. And it's got classic Scorsese stuff. I mean, he's just exploring or going through New York and all the seedy parts of New York, and Scorsese loves to explore New York in his films because it's where he's from, so he's very interested in it.
Right.
How many Scorsese films have you seen? I'm just curious.
Let's see. I haven't seen Casino. That's like on my list, and it's been on my list forever. I need to just go ahead and do it. And then what was the other one that you just mentioned, like in the grouping, the last grouping?
Like Goodfellas, or the last one, Bringing Out the Dead.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's like sort of like underseen by a lot of people, but yeah, I think it's really good. He's like, I think the only movie that I haven't seen of his is Kundun, which is like about the Dalai Lama when he's young. I think when he's just a boy, but that is just because of like a lack of interest. I should get around to it just because I want to finish his filmography. But yeah, I mean, I love Scorsese. I've seen a lot of his movies. And yeah, it's not. I mean, I could put The King of Comedy on again tonight. It's an amazing movie in my opinion.
I really enjoyed it, and I loved the color palette that they used in The Office. I don't know what it was about that, but it just kind of seemed like it seemed very similar to the color palette that's used in Jerry's fantasies. So I thought it was interesting too, because it's this thing that he feels is really attainable, and in the end it is. He just went kind of like a weird roundabout way of getting there. And so it makes sense to me that The Office shares like a similar aesthetic to his fantasies, because that's where he sees himself being.
Right. Yeah, I thought the set design of that was interesting. Like how you had this sort of, the reception desk was this like weird, like insular, like a little island. I don't even know how to explain it, but I just thought it looked interesting. But those scenes were cool because, like what you're saying about it being sort of like the set design maybe playing into his fantasies a little bit, like that's interesting. But I would almost think like I would expect them to make it more like realistic, because like everything that's happening there seems to be like them trying to give him a wake-up call, and he just refuses. And but it could be playing sort of on a double like entendre or something, like playing on both ends. Like he's struggling because they're trying to wake him up, but he refuses. But yeah, I thought a lot of those scenes were really good.
Yeah, I loved when they told him, like, you're gonna have to wait, and he's like, oh, well, I'll just sit here, and they're like, well, we're gonna call you tomorrow, and it's like that back and forth. And then he just decides to go back there, and it's just like security chasing him, and there's this shot where he is like Rupert's running back and forth, and you see him in the doorway of this office, and I thought I loved that.
Yeah, those scenes are really good. And I thought it's frustrating because I think they're giving him some good advice. Like they're saying like, just go and work on your comedy, go to your, work on your act, go to clubs. Like we'll send somebody out, we'll send somebody to watch your set. And it's like, it seems like there's a chance they're giving him there, but he just refuses to go about it the proper way, because he thinks that he should be able to just talk to Jerry and Jerry's going to hand him everything. But if he would just go to a club like a normal comedian, he might actually be able to achieve something. But yeah, so I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and that brings up like, I think that this is kind of ahead of its time in some ways, because we look at, the time period that this is taking place, and there's like a natural progression of how you become a stand-up comedian. You work on your stuff as an individual, but you're also going to clubs, and then maybe you invite somebody out to see you, and then you get called onto a show and that kind of a thing. But now, where we're at with social media and technology in general, you don't even have to be going to clubs or doing anything like that. You could get famous on the internet for making funny videos, and then you're using that to propel you into doing what you're actually passionate about. And so I don't know, honestly, I was thinking about Rupert kind of in line with, I mean, it's not the same, but in line with reality TV stars who have, gone on to do something else. Now they have like a brand or a TV show, that kind of a thing. So I don't know if Martin Scorsese was thinking ahead in that sense, but that's kind of where it led my mind when I was thinking about it in relationship to kind of where we are now with the proper way to do something.
Right. Yeah, a lot of that like stuff at the end, like with his book and everything, that definitely gives me the vibe of the reality TV stuff you're talking about. And I guess at the time, it wouldn't have been necessarily reality TV, but there was still, media sensations that happened like this. I mean, if somebody has a crazy story attached to like their rise, and in this case he has this hostage situation that he put on, then it can help their career all the better. And I guess it's sort of like even though you could look at it as a fantasy, it's also kind of a cynical look at how the media puts people on a pedestal for the wrong reasons, I guess. But,
Yes.
yeah.
And I think that
Yeah,
in a lot of ways also goes hand in hand with what I was kind of talking about, like people who have a platform now that maybe shouldn't, but it's because, you know, enough people were into what they were saying.
Yeah. I mean, today is weird because everybody has a computer in their pocket and you can reach like millions of people just on your own with really, I mean, in the 80s you had to actually go out there on the street and try to do something, but now you can just sit in your room and broadcast to millions of people. So yeah, it's a weird thing.
Yeah.
But I was thinking it's kind of like the whole time I was watching it, I was like reminded a lot of like Uncut Gems and sort of movies like that. Obviously the Safdie brothers are inspired by Martin Scorsese. I mean, I think Martin Scorsese even produces Uncut Gems, but even Good Time, I can see a connection to this. Well, this and Taxi Driver and Bring Out the Dead. But it's that similar sort of thing, like just this sort of driven guy that is putting his energy in the wrong direction.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is a theme that is just going to be kind of timeless. Like we're always going to have that, because I think that it's just kind of a part of human nature, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But so what do you think about this in relationship to the Joker, the new one?
Well, that movie was definitely playing on, the same sort of thing I'm talking about, like the Taxi Driver and this movie. So it's definitely a big influence. I mean, a lot of the mood of Joker is a lot more depressing, and I would compare it more to something like Taxi Driver. But I guess where their King of Comedy inspirations really came in is the Murray Franklin show, and Robert De Niro plays the talk show host, and sort of the design of that curtain he pops through. There's definitely stuff like that that's, I think, pulling straight from King of Comedy. But yeah, I mean, that movie like takes a lot of inspiration from Scorsese for sure.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because I didn't read too much about the movie before I watched it. I just like looked it up and read kind of like a brief summary, to get the gist of what it was about. And I didn't read them when it popped up, but I like searched King of Comedy, and then there were all these articles about the Joker ripped off King of Comedy, and this and that. And so I went back and read some of them and later on, and I agreed with some things that they were saying, but I think that, I mean, I haven't seen the new Joker in a long time, but I could see where you could get that, but I think it was more influenced by it than ripping it off.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call, like, I think ripping it off is putting things too strong. I mean, like, nothing in my mind is necessarily just a straight rip off. Like, the only thing that would be a rip off is if I, for example, took the movie Joker and at the end I said directed by Drew Nugent. That would be a rip off.
Right.
But if you're filtering influences through something, that it becomes something different. I think it just depends on how it's done. Like sometimes it can be eye rolly and sometimes it's too surface level. And I think some people could accuse Joker of that, but it's still different, and not different, but like it's enough of its own thing that I can give it a pass. It's not like a movie I love, but like I thought it was interesting because I remember when that movie was coming out, a lot of people were saying, like, I think maybe like Todd Phillips, the director or something, was saying like it's more inspired by King of Comedy than it is Taxi Driver, but I see more Taxi Driver in it because of the violence and the mental health themes. It's more close to that in my mind, but there are King of Comedy flourishes for sure because he's trying to be a comedian and there's all the talk show stuff and stuff like that. But yeah.
And isn't Robert De Niro on the talk show?
Yeah, he's the host of the talk show and a
Okay,
Joker.
that's what I thought.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah,
thought it
and
was interesting, and I just wanted to know like what your thoughts were about that, because I kind of felt that, I mean, it's the internet. What are we gonna do? But that they were just having like very strong opinions about it ripping off the King of Comedy, and I didn't really feel that way.
well, yeah, the internet will spin anything into some big serious controversy to get some clicks.
Right.
But yeah, especially with Joker. I mean, I remember that came out and like it was one of these movies that just like everything about it like garnered some controversy because there was controversy about, is this going to incite gun violence? There was like worry that there was worry that there was like people were talking like the movie might get pulled from like screenings when it was first coming out, and there was like just a bunch of insane stuff happening. But it ended up making like $1 billion. But it's interesting to look back on because we live in a like basically ever since Trump first ran in 2015. Not to get too political, but I feel like there's been a controversy like every 2 seconds, and so it's interesting to look back on controversies like that are almost 4 years old now.
Right. And yeah, I had forgotten about, I remember now about it getting like possibly pulled and things like that.
Mhm.
But I had definitely forgotten that happened. I just remembered people felt really strongly one way or another of like, oh, we really liked the Joker versus um disliking it for reasons other than it being like not a good movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was a lot better than I expected it to be, but it still wasn't like Oscar caliber amazing movie in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
I would agree with that.
but this is Oscar caliber King of Comedy.
Yes.
I think it's. I don't think it was nominated for anything. I mean, maybe. Let me look that up real quick because I think maybe Sandra Bernhard might have been nominated for something.
She was great. I really enjoyed her performance, and I don't know, I would have liked to seen like more of her backstory to kind of understand why is she obsessed with Jerry. Oh, this is what I was going to say earlier. So it's really interesting to me to see a male character like Rupert who is obsessed with someone like Jerry who he looks up to, but it's like more than looks up to. It's like, I want to be you. Because I think in a lot of movies and just media that I've seen, typically that kind of obsession is portrayed in women, like either women obsessed with like a male like rock star or something like that, or women obsessed with um, other women, and just thinking about like the idea of diva worship, how people are really into Cher and Dolly and things like that. And I kind of see this as being, I mean, it's not the same thing as diva worship because that's its own different thing, but this is the closest I've seen to something like that, I think, in a movie.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And it's interesting because they do have the thing of her being obsessed, but then it's sort of you have Robert De Niro being obsessed as well. So I guess that sort of balances it out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other movies where it's like a man obsessed with another man because that creates a strange dynamic in a lot of things. I mean, The Master, it's not quite that, but they like Philip Seymour Hoffman and Joaquin Phoenix have a strange sort of relationship. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's lots of. Oh, there's actually I haven't seen this movie, but The Fan, starring Robert De Niro, directed by Tony Scott, who did Top Gun. That's about a baseball fan who played by Robert De Niro who's obsessed with Wesley Snipes, who's his favorite baseball player. And I haven't seen that, but I need to. There's also a big fan with Patton Oswalt. It's like about a guy who's like he meets his favorite football player and he gets beat up by him. That's an interesting movie.
Don't meet your
But
heroes.
yeah, exactly. But that's another movie that's probably influenced by this in Taxi Driver a little bit, but yeah, there's lots of stuff out there for sure.
So something else that I noticed when I was watching it, and I think that this kind of contributed to me feeling like I was, holding my breath or like kind of anxious for what was going to happen next, was I noticed that everyone were like, nobody was really listening to each other. Like every single piece of dialogue, aside from maybe his not his girlfriend, but the girl that he brings along to Jerry's house, aside from that, everybody else is just talking, and then the other person who's in the conversation is waiting for them to stop talking so that they can start talking about their own thing, and nobody's really listening to each other at all the whole time. And that is even happening with the cops when they have Rupert in the room right before the recording, and they're all just kind of not talking over each other, but one will say something and then the other one puts his 2 cents in, and none of them are listening. So that was, I think, a good device for kind of upping the stress of the situation, because no one
Yeah,
feels
that's
like they're
definitely a
being
good
listened
point.
to.
Yeah, for sure. Like everybody has their own agenda. I mean, if Robert De Niro is talking to Jerry, Jerry's just sitting there waiting, just thinking like, when's my moment that I can get this guy out of my house or away from me? If Robert De Niro is talking to Sandra Bernhard, usually he's telling her she's wrong and she needs to listen to him, or she's telling him she's just trying to get to Jerry through him. And there's tons of different examples like that. But like you said, it is really good in building the stress, and that's something that, like I was bringing up Uncut Gems earlier, the Safdie brothers do. People talk a lot about how the Uncut Gems is like a crazy anxiety-ridden experience, and I can definitely see them taking from this to build that style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I rewatched Uncut Gems, I think about 6 months ago, and that was the first time I had watched it since I had first seen it. And the first time I saw it, I don't know what was going on with me, but it didn't really stress me out at all. And I watched it. I told one of my friends I was going to rewatch it, and they were like, "How could you rewatch that? It's so stressful." And I was sitting there thinking, "No, it's not. It's not that bad." And then I rewatched it, and I was so stressed out.
Yeah. I mean, this might not be great to admit, but I almost find it exciting in the same way taking Adderall is like exciting. It's like you had like 5 different cups of coffee, or like 8 different cups of coffee, and it's just like it's an energy rush, but not in a good way. I think they're trying to make you experience what Howard's experiencing, Howard Adam Sandler's character.
Mm-hmm.
Every time he wins or he's gambling and he wins and he hits big, you get that crazy rush, and it's exactly why he keeps doing it over and over again. And yeah, I think that's a big part of what they're doing. I mean, I know the director had said he doesn't look at it as an anxiety-inducing movie. I think more just because it's not necessarily anxiety. I think he's looking at it as like it's just about the energy rush you get, or that's the sort of thing he's going for, I think. But I still think you can interpret it that way. There is a lot of anxiety and stress in the movie for sure.
Right. Oh, one thing that I really was hoping for was more backstory on why Masha was so obsessed with Jerry. Um, because I just couldn't understand, because the reason Rupert is obsessed with him is because he has what Rupert wants. But Masha, lives in the nice townhouse. She has, money. And maybe the only thing she doesn't have is people giving her attention, because she lives in that big place all alone and ends up taping Jerry down to the chair and is just like talking to him without stopping, for a good long while they're holding him hostage. But aside from that, aside from just wanting some kind of human attention, I couldn't think of any other reason why she would be obsessed with specifically Jerry.
I mean, I saw it just as sort of, and maybe this is too surface level, but just as insane fan kind of stuff, like just somebody who's obsessed with somebody just because they're on TV and just because they're very popular. And you have lots of people like that out there. I mean, the people that will go to an autograph signing or something and stand right on the line and just scream for somebody. I just saw it as that, basically. But it is strange that they show it, or they show her having this amazing apartment and whatnot. But I guess it's just to say, like, there's people, you don't have to be in the slums to be like, have some sort of mental issues.
Yeah.
But, yeah. One small note, I really like the first scene where people are just going insane for Jerry, and then Mosh is in the car when he gets in, and then Robert De Niro pulls him out and is protecting him from these people. And I like that shot of the opening credits play over where it's just on her hands, and you have a corner of Robert De Niro's face. There's something about that I really like, and just the music. I thought that was cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I first started the movie, I kind of wondered if Robert De Niro had set up Masha to be there in the car so that he could kind of switch with her. And then I realized very quickly that Masha would not have given up her position in the car to help Rupert in any kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I could see it playing like that, but you're right. She wouldn't really, like you were saying, when people, they're not listening, they all have their own agendas, and she has her own agenda that she wouldn't sacrifice for anything. So yeah, that is interesting.
And it's interesting too how they both seem to be very absorbed, but yet they're so obsessed with somebody else. That was something that was hard for me to comprehend.
Well, I think in Robert De Niro's case, you can look at it for sure as just extreme narcissism, because he may be obsessed with this person, but he's only obsessed with this person as a reflection of him. He wants to be him. So I think it's still, complete self-absorption. But in Masha's case, I think it might be, like you said, she lives alone in this townhouse. It might just be her trying to fill some empty part of her life. So it's a little bit different in that case. But in the case of Robert De Niro, I think he's definitely completely self-absorbed.
And what do you think about Jerry as a character?
Well, I had a lot of sympathy for him, throughout the whole. I don't know that he has really a deep character, but in a lot of the situations, I was on his side, and I thought Jerry Lewis was. I mean, I haven't seen too many Jerry Lewis movies, but I thought he was funny in certain scenes. I liked when Robert De Niro was sort of just, they're going back and forth when he's at Jerry's house, and he's like, "Look, I'm sorry, I messed up," and then Jerry's like, "So did Hitler," and I thought that was a good line. But yeah, I thought it was good. There's not really a deep angle I can really take from his character, but I thought it was a good performance.
Yeah, I thought so too. He did a good job at kind of playing the guy the famous person who wants to keep to themselves. There was one scene in particular, not with Jerry, but with Jerry's, I don't know if she was his assistant or just somebody who worked for Jerry in some other capacity. I can't remember her name, but she comes out to talk to Rupert, and they're going back and forth. I actually think she's the one that's like, I'll call you on Monday. And he's like, well, what about tomorrow? And then they do that whole thing. And if that isn't like every single customer service or like customer facing job that I've ever had, that interaction.
Yeah, exactly.
One that I've had many a time. And so
yeah, it's super frustrating.
Yeah, the frustration there.
Mm-hmm. And it's even more frustrating because I think she's giving him good advice, like, and he just refuses to listen. And also at the beginning, like, Jerry is giving him good advice. Like, if he would just listen when he's in the car, and Jerry just sort of matter-of-factly just says, it may seem like a cheesy thing, but it's true. And I think he even says that, like, you have to work your way up from the bottom. You can't just come to some celebrity and expect them to give you things. And this is something that people, I think, get wrapped up in now even. Like, if they're trying to get famous, or they'll message like a celebrity on Instagram or something and expect them to, respond and think it's going to be some gateway into the biz, but it's not how it's done.
Right. And I think that with celebrity comes people who don't understand that you're still just a person.
Exactly.
And that was something that I think showed through very well in this movie through Jerry.
Yeah. Well, Robert De Niro doesn't look at him as a person at all. He's just a means to an end. I don't think he has any empathy for anything that he's going through. I mean, he certainly doesn't care if he's taped up to a chair in a room, as long as he can get on stage and do his set. But yeah, I mean, that is interesting how you kind of look at like how celebrities are dehumanized in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
It made me wonder, like, I wonder if David Letterman, or just like talk show hosts, like, because I mean, obviously celebrities have this stuff happen, but like, do talk show hosts, like David Letterman was in New York, so it's a similar situation. Was David Letterman like mobbed all the time? I can't see people being like obsessed with David Letterman, but maybe. Who knows?
I'm sure there are some aspiring talk show hosts out there somewhere who are obsessed with David Letterman. It's kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, Howard Stern's a similar one. Like, I think he creates a whole world that people get wrapped up in, and I can understand how somebody might, like, I think I listened to his show a lot, or at least older episodes. And he definitely had stalkers and all kinds of weird people in his life, but yeah. One thing I wanted to say is I like the surrealism of certain scenes. Like, when we talked about the delusion stuff, but like just the surrealism of Robert De Niro sort of sitting and doing his set to this giant wall of faces. I love like shots like that. Like, it just created a really good mood and vibe.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite shots in the movie. And him sitting there with the cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, that was really good. And just going back and forth.
And his mom yelling at him.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what are you still doing up, or what are you doing down there? And
yeah, she's the best. That's actually Martin Scorsese's actual mom, who he puts in like a lot of his movies.
Oh, really?
She's in Goodfellas, and she's in
she was in Goodfellas, but I didn't realize she was in this.
Yeah, like she's in a movie called Italian American, which is a documentary he made about them. It's like a short documentary. It's like 40 something minutes, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that she's in. I think she was in Casino too. That's probably the last one she was in before she died, but yeah, every time she's in one of his movies. It's usually great. I think that's pretty much all I had to say.
Yeah,
I'd give it a
that's
5 out of 5 easily.
I think I gave it a 4.5. Let me see. Because my favorite, and not that they can't all be 5s, but my favorite Martin Scorsese has been After Hours.
Right.
And that's a 5 for me. I gave this a 4.5.
Yeah, After Hours is really good.
It's just so different from some of the other stuff that he's done, and I know you said like that one's more of a comedy for sure, but
it's still the energy they create is awesome. It's an amazingly made movie. It's interesting because I think that movie was originally sort of a jobber kind of thing for Scorsese. Like, it was just a script that came to him. It was originally supposed to be directed by Tim Burton, but
oh, really?
he dropped out. Yeah, which would have been a totally different thing. But even though it wasn't like a passion project for him, he puts everything into it, and it feels like 100% like a Scorsese movie by the end. And and like what I was saying, like, this movie experiments with more of the comedy stuff. That movie is like a total comedy, I think, and it's cool to see Scorsese play in that zone. That's definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah, I love him like really pushing the surrealism in both After Hours and in The King of Comedy. I thought that was really strong.
Yeah, definitely. I think my favorites are Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, this, and then Wolf of Wall Street. Those are probably my top 4.
I'm gonna look really quick at like what I have seen and haven't seen of his. Oh, I've never seen The Departed.
That's good. I mean, I don't dislike any Scorsese movie. That one might be lower, but it's still really good.
That's definitely like on my list of shame, I guess. Of stuff
There's a few that are interesting that are different. Like, I would recommend The Age of Innocence with Daniel Day-Lewis. That's a really good one.
Yeah, I'll check that one out. And yeah, I haven't seen Bringing Out the Dead, and that's one of the ones that you were talking about earlier, right? And I've been really wanting to watch his The Last Temptation of the Christ with Willem Dafoe. That's been on my list.
Yeah, there's parts of that movie that are amazing and are really good. I'm not like, it's a little long, but I still think it's a very good movie for sure. But there's always like with that and like The Age of Innocence, like with Kun Dun, and maybe I'll be surprised by Kun Dun, I'm just not interested in the source material that much. So I'm like kind of dreading like watching it because I think I'll be bored or something. But I remember feeling that way about The Age of Innocence and ending up loving it. And even The Last Temptation of Christ, like, there's parts of that movie that are just like amazing. And Willem Dafoe is really good in it. So yeah, I mean, Scorsese, he never really misses, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I might do a
He has a new movie coming out soon.
Oh, is it what is it? The Killing of the Flower Moon?
Yeah, it's like Killers of the Flower Moon with Leonardo DiCaprio. First one we'll get to see Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro in the same movie, because they're two, like, Scorsese's two guys. And then I think Brendan Fraser has a small role. It should be cool, for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. I remember when they first really announced it, and I was excited, but did they announce it before COVID or during, like, at the beginning of COVID?
I think at the beginning, but they've been making it for about like 2 years now.
That's what I
But
thought.
whenever they announced it, it was definitely during COVID, but it's still been a while.
Yeah, I remember when they announced it thinking, oh, I'm so excited for this, and then, oh man, it's not going to come out for a while. But it's supposed to come out.
What were you saying a second ago?
Right?
Oh, sorry.
It's supposed
it's supposed to come out like November.
Oh, what was I saying a second ago?
You're saying you want to do a double feature of something
Oh,
of Scorsese movies?
I've been wanting to watch Jesus Christ Superstar. And so I might
That'd be a
do
good one.
Jesus Christ Superstar and The Last Temptation of the Christ.
Definitely good. Like you'd have a more dour one, and then you can jump into Jesus Christ Superstar and be uplifted.
Yeah,
But yeah, that could
for
definitely
sure.
Yeah. But I think that's pretty much all I have to say about the movie. Thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and we'll definitely review something else soon. But yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Bye.